Recording now. Well, hello everybody. This is one in a continuing series of app webinars that we really enjoy giving to you, and I hope you as well enjoy them. This one is a very interesting one called Syntropy, Consciousness and Feelings by Ulisse Di Corpo, who in fact did a previous webinar with us, which was focused on the whole concept of syntropy. And in fact, it was centered on this book, Syntropy, the Spirit of Love. He has in fact written several other books. This one in our current time happens to be particularly important, which discusses a paradigm shift, which he feels, as I do and as many others do, has in fact already started. Where I believe at the beginning of that paradigm shift, and indeed I believe it is a consciousness paradigm shift, moving us towards something like much more connectivity. We are one. Precognition is one of the things which indeed shows that. So he's written a book on that, where this paradigm shift in fact is really potentially quite necessary at this point in time in our history. And his focus is on things like, and this is from an earlier, actually a novel, The Theorem of Love. Isn't that a great title? Which of course gets us into the whole thing of feelings and emotions. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Ulisse right now. So let me
Thank you.
Let me make
Can you see my PowerPoint?
No, not yet. Let me just do that. I need to find you here. There you are. Okay, so you should now just click on the thing and then they'll see your presentation.
Okay. Okay, so you can see it now, I suppose.
Yes, I can see. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, very well. Well, I will first do a small recap of what I did say last July in the last webinar. Well, all the idea about syntropy starts from special relativity. I think everyone knows about this equation E equal mc squared, but few people know that this equation was first published by Oliver Heaviside in 1890, and then by Henry Poincaré and Olinto de Pretto in 1903. But there was a problem with the E equal mc squared equation, that it didn't take into account the speed of objects, the momentum. And so it was difficult to use it. It was giving errors. And what Einstein did, he added the momentum, which is this P in the equation. And doing so, the equation became a double order equation. This means that when you want to find the value of energy, you need to use a square root. And square roots always have two solutions, one positive and one negative. But since in the momentum we have time, which is used as a variable, we have energy with positive time, energy which propagates forward in time, and energy with negative time, which propagates backward in time. Well, in 1905, when Einstein was faced with this dual solution for energy, said, well, the backward in time energy is just impossible. You cannot have an effect before its causes. and no one would have ever accepted the idea of an energy that flows backward in time. So what he did, he solved the problem saying, well, the momentum, the speed of the bodies, physical bodies, is so low compared to the speed of light that we can really omit the momentum from the equation and go back to the E equal mc squared equation that has only a positive time solution. But this dual solution of energy was coming out in quantum mechanics, because in quantum mechanics the full energy momentum mass equation has to be used. And that was really creating huge problems and conflicts, because some physicists were saying, oh no, it's just impossible to accept a backward in time solution. Others were saying, well, it is in the equations, we should try to understand what it means. And in 1940, Luigi Fantapie, he was a mathematician that at the age of 21, he graduated from the most exclusive university in Italy. And in 1950, Oppenheimer invited him to work at the Institute for Advanced Studies in Princeton and worked directly with Einstein. Well, Luigi Fantapie was working on these equations, but he was a mathematician, not a physicist. So he really wanted to understand what this forward in time and backward in time solutions meant. And working on the mathematical properties, he found out that the positive in time solution describes energy that diverges from a cause. For example, we have a light bulb and the light diverges from the light bulb, or we have a heater and the heat diverges from the heater. But the backward in time solution is just the opposite. We have energy converging towards a future cause. And listing the properties of the forward and backward in time solution, he found that the forward in time solution is governed by the law of entropy. That means that we have energy which is available, and then it just it is dispersed in the environment. Whereas with the backward in time solution, we have concentration of energy, increase of diversity, complexity, structures, which are the properties of living beings. So on one side, the forward in time solution was describing the visible physical world, the mechanical physical world, whereas the backward in time solution was describing life, but the invisible force which is behind life. And he wrote a book in 1941 that is titled The Unitary Theory of the Physical and Biological World, where he suggests that the physical and mechanical world are governed by the forward in time solution, whereas life and life properties are governed by the backward in time solution. And that means that life is caused by the future and not by the past, according to Fantapie's theory and Fantapie's model. Well, many other authors in that period were coming up with similar ideas. For example, Teilhard de Chardin, who was a paleontologist, he could see that in paleontology, life species, they evolve towards an attractor. It's like if there is an attractor at the end of the evolution of a species, and there is not a passage between one species and the other, but they are each species in their own track evolving towards their own attractor. And he was also, Teilhard de Chardin was also a Jesuit priest, and he came up with the idea that life is created from the future, and that if we should read correctly the Genesis, we should read it backward in time, because God is creating life from the future. Well, the church didn't like his ideas, and he was sent far away to China, and he was forbidden to teach these ideas. But these ideas were coming up from different places, but there was a problem with these ideas. It was that it was difficult to set up experiments that could prove that the future was really at the basis of life, at the foundations of life. And after the Second World War, these ideas were really censored. They were not allowed to be published on scientific journals. And also Syntropy, he was a great mathematician working with Einstein, but he was really forbidden to make conferences, to give conferences on this topic. I started working on these ideas in 1976 when I, in a way, had intuitions that led me to these ideas, and my thesis in psychology and in statistics were on this model, but it was impossible to find any work and book of Syntropy. And it was very difficult to find people with whom to work on these ideas. Then, at the beginning of the year 2000, I married with Antonella Vannini. She's a psychologist, and she did a PhD on this topic. And her idea was, well, if life is sustained by syntropy, the parameters of the autonomic nervous system that support vital functions should react in advance to stimuli. So the idea was that skin conductance and heart rate should react before future stimuli. And setting up experiments, we found out that this was true only when using emotional stimuli, not rational stimuli. So, for example, if you did show to a person neutral images and, say, strongly emotional images, like erotical images, well, the heart rate was reacting in advance to the stimuli. And we could see the same effect with colors. For example, in this slide, you see the experimental design that Antonella used, and she was showing full screen different colors. In this example, each color stayed on the screen for 4 seconds, and measuring the heart rate. The person was then asked to try to guess which color the computer would have selected in the last phase. Well, the results that came out is that the heart rate in the first phase of the experiments reacted in advance of time to the target color that was being chosen, say 10 seconds later, 16 seconds later. But the person was not able to guess the color that was being selected by the computer. So in a way, our autonomic nervous system, our heart, already knew what was going to happen, but the head did not know. There is this kind of division between our head which is based on sensory information, which comes from the past, and our heart, our feelings that are able to sense, to feel the future. So the idea that came out is that feelings are in a way a product of syntropy, and syntropy is a product of all what is invisible, because we cannot see causes in the future. We cannot see what is in the future, whereas what is in the past is visible. And for example, consciousness is not visible. We can feel it, but we cannot touch it. And the idea behind this theory is that consciousness is an expression of this backward in time flow of information. The idea is that we are in the middle of a dual flow of information, information that comes from the past and which is objective, it is visible, and information that comes from the future, which is not visible, but we can feel it. And we constantly have to choose which of the two information to follow. We have to choose either to follow the head or the heart, and this would be at the basis of free will. Constantly we would be in front of bifurcations, information from the past and information from the future. Well, we usually tend to pay more attention to the information that comes from the past, because it is objective, quantitative, it is visible, whereas information that comes from the future is invisible. It's qualitative, it's subjective, and it is very difficult to trust. Well, coming to consciousness, this model suggests that consciousness is divided in 3 different levels. The conscious level, which is, say, what we experience with the head and choosing our direction, choosing what to do, and the unconscious level, because Syntropy is constantly providing energy and information to our body, but we are not conscious of this information. We are not conscious on how our cells work, on how our digestive system work, on how our heart works. It's all these processes are all automatic processes and unconscious processes. But then there is another level of consciousness that would be outside of our body, that we call the superconscious level. It's like if Syntropy, it is an attractor placed in the future, and when we go in that direction, when we're heading towards the attractor, since Syntropy converges energy, we feel a feeling of warmth in the autonomic nervous system connected to well-being. So we have positive feelings that tell us that we're heading towards our, say, aim, our attractor. Whereas when we're aiming in different directions, instead of experimenting feelings of warmth and well-being, we experiment feelings of emptiness and void, which are usually named anxiety and angst. The idea is that in order to favor our well-being, we need to learn to follow these feelings of well-being and warmth that are located in our autonomic nervous system, and they work like a compass. They tell us which is the most advantageous direction that we should follow. Now, in Greece, in ancient Greece, they had a similar say model. They used to say that time is divided in chronos, forward in time, and that is what our head follows. Then there is a unitary time that is the subconscious level. For example, when you use hypnosis, you get in this unitary time, and it's possible to move forward and backward in time. Then there is this retrocausal time, kairos, which would be the typical time of syntropy, this backward in time flow of information. And it's what we usually don't consider in our paradigm, in our culture. And when I talk about a shift of paradigm, I say that we should consider that our reality is not only a cause and effect reality, but it is a supercausal reality where we have as many causes acting from the past as we have causes retroacting from the future. Now, what comes from the past, we can perceive it in a physical way. Our body, we can have a body sensations, whereas the future, and that is very well shown with the experiments, it's felt. We can feel the future. So the idea is that when we are working on, for example, AVR, the key tool that we're using our feelings is presentiment, and precognition in a way would be a byproduct of feelings. Now, which is the importance of this, say, model? The point is that in order to live in an advantageous way, we should be able to feel the future. How can we enhance our ability to feel the future? Well, here I use an example that I liked a lot. This summer I read the biography of Steve Jobs, and I must say that I have found a lot of elements that I found coherent with what I'm talking now. For example, one of the techniques that that works very well when we're trying to enhance our ability to feel the future, to connect to our feelings, is silence. Steve Jobs was a Zen meditator, and the practice of silence can help us to quiet the chatter of our mind and enhance the ability to feel what the heart is telling us. And the idea is that we should move our focus from the head to the feelings. And Steve Jobs learned about this process in India, and he used to say that in India they use intuition. They give more importance to intuition than to rationality. And intuition is what we are feeling with our heart. It's something that comes from the future, but it's not, say, when we feel an intuition, the design, the information is not clear at all. We have a strong feeling associated to an intuition, but we're not able to clearly say what it is. And the big difficulty is to put together this level of feelings, of intuitions, with rationality, and it was the very big difficulty that Steve Jobs used to have. He had a very bad temper. When he had intuitions, he was not accepting any kind of objection. At the same time, other choices that he did in his personal life, I think, that are very important when we are moving towards this focus on feelings and intuitions. For example, I've been a vegetarian since 1972, and I think that that has been a choice that has helped me a lot. And so many other choices can be done in this direction, and I suggest that you read his biography. I would like, if you have questions at the moment before I go on, would you please give me a feedback about what I'm saying?
Well, I think it's fascinating. But I would like somebody else. Yeah, John, go ahead. Why don't you make a comment?
Well, yeah, I'm impressed too with this. It made me think. I have a question I was going to ask later. I'm getting some echo here. I don't know where that echo is coming from. But we did do some experiments using emotions in ARV, and they were very successful. So I'll ask about that later. What you think about that, Professor Di Corpo?
No, but if you have a question, you can ask it now. I think, in fact, he'd like some questions now, John. So go ahead.
It gets rather complex because it involves unitary AR, what I call unitary ARV, where we have just one target, not two. For example, we targeted an anonymous gambler at a casino, how he felt when he bet on a certain team to win, or we bet we targeted the crowd at a game when the game ends and their emotion. And we had 3 viewers doing that, and we had 9 hits in a row. There was quite a bit of money bet on the 10th one, which was a failure. But this and other experiences have led me to think perhaps our best results will come about with what I call unitary ARV, not with binary ARV. So I wanted your take on that, and anybody else who has thoughts on that too.
Well, I don't know if I understood exactly the question, but you know, one of the points about feelings is that they don't provide you a clear information about the future. So one of the problems about this backward in time flow of information is that we have to reduce to a very limited or unitary information that we're trying to feel. For example, if we want to win a lottery with this, with feeling the future, it's just impossible. But if we have only one stimuli that we can say, for example, a photo that we can put straight or back up down, maybe we're able to feel how this future stimuli will be placed. So the kind of flow of information that we can get is extremely limited and uncertain, and we have to cope with that. The problem is that our head comes in and ruins a lot what our feelings are telling us. So we might have an intuition, a feeling, but then we try to give a logic to it, and then we just go in the wrong way.
Are there any experiments that try to measure the limitation of information from the future? You may be familiar with Leo Swan and others' reference to Nora Trander's book talking about the tremendous amount of energy that floods into the biomind, as he calls it, but that there's only 24 bits a second or something that we can process. So my question is, have there been experiments that try to measure this, I guess, the width of the pipeline from the future to the present?
Yes, there was some noise that didn't allow me to really get your question. So can you repeat the key part of your question?
Well, maybe you can, if there are experiments that have been done to measure the flow of information from the future to the past or to the present, however you define it. If there have been experiments done to try to measure that, that would be interesting to hear about.
Well, we have not, the experiments we did, they clearly showed that, at least the experiments we were involved in, they were telling us that you were having feelings, presentiment, and that the key point was to try to keep the channel as pure as possible without any interference, and that is extremely difficult. But in our experiments, the amount of information that you can have flowing on that channel is extremely limited in our experiments. So I don't know, Igor Swan, what experiments he did or what you're referring to, but our say results were really in a way pointing to the fact that we have to learn how to use feelings to decide in the most advantageous way. That is when we're in front of a bifurcation, our feelings tell us which is the way we have to go and which is the way that we have to avoid. But we don't know why. We have no information associated to it, to this kind of feelings, so to drive in one direction instead of going in another direction. Well, we are using this kind of, say, results in the field of decision making in economics, because the traditional way how decisions are made by managers, often it just increases entropy. Whereas when a manager starts to focus on its intuitive side, in his feelings, and in what we call the heart, usually the decisions are more advantageous, and they reduce entropy and they increase syntropy. That it means that they increase the say the richness of the company, the innovation, the ability to go in directions which are more successful.
Okay, thanks, John. Why don't you go on, Ulisse?
Yes. Well, now one of the points is that it is very difficult to work directly on syntropy because it is invisible. So how can we work on syntropy that we cannot touch and we cannot see? The equations show that entropy and syntropy are one the complement of the other. The idea is very simple. Energy is, say, a constant. It cannot be created or destroyed. But according to this energy momentum mass equation, it can be in diverging or converging. You have a say, entropic component in energy, a syntropic component. When the entropic component increases, the syntropic one decreases. So it is like if they're playing on a seesaw. If entropy increases, syntropy decreases. When entropy decreases, syntropy increases. And entropy is death, is suffering, is what it is not sustainable, not viable. Whereas syntropy, it is life, it is well-being, it is happiness, it is love. So our aim is the aim of life is that of increasing syntropy and reducing entropy. And we can do that constantly in our life. In each moment of our life, we're faced with decisions. And each decision we do has an entropic component in it. If we reduce the entropy of the decisions we do, syntropy automatically increases. Well, what I found very interesting in this, say, view, in this idea, is that usually when we tend to go towards a minimalist life, and that is reducing entropy, well, syntropy automatically increases. And when syntropy increases, then we start experiencing this causality that comes from the future. For example, Jung used to call it synchronicities. We start saying that events are linked one to the other, not because of causes acting from the past, but because of something else that we're not able to see because it is in the future. And going back to Steve Jobs, he used to live a minimalist life, if you read his biography. And even if he was one of the richest men, he used to live a very essential life. And that was giving him the ability to focus on his feelings and on the intuitive part. And the intuitive part was allowing him to feel the future, to bring innovations in this company. So when we start putting this invisible part in our life, also our lifestyle changes. We decide, we do decisions in a different way. We start organizing our activities, our jobs in different ways, our daily life. But there are problems with these decisions, and that has to do with values and the meaning that we provide to life. One of the basic problems with this duality, entropy and syntropy playing together, is that syntropy is converging. So if syntropy is behind our consciousness, we feel to be very small and limited because it is a converging tendency. So consciousness would be felt infinitely small inside ourselves, whereas the physical universe is governed by the diverging energy and tends to be infinite, to expand. Well, we feel it as being infinite. Well, when we compare ourselves so limited and small to the universe, we're just equal to zero. So on a side, consciousness and syntropy, they provide us the feeling of life. We feel we exist. On the other side, we become aware that we're equal to nothing. That means we're like if we were dead. And I call this the identity conflict. And the identity conflict has been always at the basis of, say, a huge amount of books and works of humanity. Shakespeare used to say, to be or not to be. That is the question. On one side, we feel we're alive. On the other side, we see that we're dead, we're nothing. And we feel this conflict as life being meaningless, having no purpose. And you know, if our life has no purpose, why do we live? So we need to provide a solution to the identity conflict. If we don't provide a solution, it just consumes, it uses up all our energy. The ways that we usually, the strategies that we usually use to cope with identity conflict is to increase the numerator of the equation. So if I feel useless, I say, well, I'm not just I'm what other people judge me, so I try to increase the numerator, or I'm more because I'm wealthy, or because of my popularity, or because of my power. And but whatever we put on the top line, on the numerator, the equation is always equal to zero. So we don't solve our conflict. We can have the biggest amount of wealth, of power, popularity, but we continue to feel meaningless. And the identity conflict continues to be felt. And according to this model, the identity conflict is behind depression. One other strategy people use sometimes is to try to reduce the reality to which we compare. So instead of the universe, we tend to close ourselves up to a community. And if we really feel accepted by the community, well, then I'm equal I, only if I'm really part of the community. But this kind of model sometimes is behind sects, and can be very dysfunctional. Another way is just to eliminate the reality outside ourselves, and so we compare ourselves only to us, and this is often behind psychotic disorders and other psychiatric illnesses. And so, you know, working on the numerator or denominator of the equation doesn't really provide a solution. What the theory suggests is that the only way that we have to find the meaning of our life is that if we unite syntropy, consciousness, I, with the entropy, which is the universe. When we unite syntropy and entropy, then this universe just goes away, and where we experience the feeling of our life. So if we're able to move from perception of life, which is dualistic, where we have entropy and syntropy, we have always these polarities, and we're capable to go towards a perception that is unitary, then we experience what I call the theorem of love, and we experience the meaning of our life. Well, this is easy to say in words, but it's not at all easy to do it practically, because usually we tend to avoid to change the values, the way how we provide a meaning to our life. Anyone that comes up and says, well, probably it would be more advantageous to follow this path to provide a meaning to your life instead of, say, another strategy that we're using. Well, we find that to be very, say, dangerous. We're very afraid of that. So what I experience is that when working with people and, say, reducing their entropy in order that syntropy goes up, and working on silence and focusing on feelings. But if we're not able to change the way how we provide a meaning to our life, then all what we do is sometimes just collapse, and it doesn't stay. Well, what I find very useful in this direction is what I call diversity. The contact with people that are very different from ourselves, and seeing the universe, reality, from very different perspectives can be extremely useful in letting us change the way how we provide a value and a meaning to our life. So what I see as a change, as a key change that we're facing now, is that we live in a era which is dominated by this identity conflict, by duality, and where entropy is very strong. And we should learn how to move towards a new era where entropy and syntropy constantly play together, because it's not that syntropy is good and entropy is bad. One needs the other. We need to go towards a non-dual perspective of life. And this is what I call the theorem of love. Well, I'm more or less at the end of my presentation now. One book that we have published recently is Syntropy, the Spirit of Love, and you can find many other books that we have published, and they're available on Kindle. Okay, any questions? Hello?
I'm unmuting everybody.
That was a wonderful talk. Thank you for giving that. I don't know. Yes, I don't know if you could hear me, but that not only hearing you, but actually being able to see you, see your face throughout the whole presentation. You could see the love just emanating from you as you were just going through the topic, how passionate you are about this. I mean, I could feel it. I could feel it. It was amazing and wonderful. And just learning to balance that intuition and rationality, and is a very important point to make. And I really appreciated the other statement you made about diversity and having making sure that we add people to our life that have different perspectives, because that's so very important.
Yes, well, that has been extremely useful for me. In a way, all this work on syntropy has been the result of diversity, of being exposed to extremely different cultural environment where I could see that everyone was right. You know, you can find Christians to be right, Hinduist, Buddhist, people from Islam, everyone is right. But then when you see that everyone is right, you have to go to the core. What is at the core of each message? And when you go to the core of each message, you find that love is at the core of each message. And then how to put love in science, because the problem of science is that science tends to refuse feelings and emotions, because, you know, from a materialistic, mechanical point of view, it's very difficult to understand what feelings and emotions are. And the intuition that I had was that, yes, it is very difficult until we try to explain it in a cause and effect way. But if we have retrocausality in the design, then retrocausality can only be felt, and you have feelings coming in the design.
Yes, I know. In science, especially in medicine, everybody wants to put subjective and objective. When you were going over the autonomic nervous system slides and you were talking about information from the past solely being objective, and it isn't subjective as well. Do you truly feel that it is solely objective and that we aren't applying subjective information to this as well to contribute to the disconnect between that intuitive and rationality?
Well, you know, the flow of information from the future, feelings, are subjective. They're not objective. So the problem with intuitions is that they are incredibly subjective. But if we receive, the idea is that in a way the future is unitary, is converging. So if we are able to feel the future, we should find a way to let other people feel what we're feeling. For example, Michelangelo was saying that when he had a stone in front of himself, well, that was a stone, but he could see already the statue inside of it. So the point was how to let other people see the statue that he could see in the stone. The same has to do with us. We feel the future. How can we let other people feel, experience what we're feeling? And it is very difficult because, you know, when it is a subjective, a qualitative experience, it's very difficult to communicate.
Well, thank you. I really appreciated the talk. I thought it was wonderful.
Thanks.
Ulisse, I have a question for you.
Yes.
There is an echo. Wait, did that get rid of the echo? Yeah, I think so. The question is related to what John was talking about. I would like to relate what you said, which was marvelous, and so I don't know quite how to say it. Big picture. You know, obviously what you're doing is very, very big picture. But what I would like to get at here is relate this to remote viewing and the idea of feelings, intuitive, coming from the future. Imagine if in remote viewing, whether it's associative remote viewing or regular remote viewing, we always have feedback. For it to be really meaningful, you need to have feedback. So the question is, what's your feeling about if we get very emotional with the feedback and entangle it with our emotion. If it's the target were the specifics of I don't know, even if it was just a beautiful scene, a mountain, flowers, which happened to be one that I got today, but I really got into it emotionally. Um, would that then, do you think, in the moment of when we did the remote viewing session, expect to get a better transcript? In other words, would the entanglement be better because I'm involving emotions directly at what's called feedback time in the future?
Yes, well, according to our results, if you want this kind of entanglement, if you want to have a better feedback, the emotions, feelings play an extremely important role. So if you're using a stimuli that you're trying to feel in the future, that stimuli should have a strong emotional content. And it would be much easier to feel it and to have presentiment of something that is strongly emotional.
This is so interesting because I think you know enough about remote viewing to know it's been used extensively to describe distant locations, distant people, distant in space and time. Um, so it works kind of without the direct focus on emotions the way you're saying it. And yet, I think if you add emotions to it, um, you would do even better. And that's sort of what I'm getting at. There have been plenty of descriptions of things which kind of have no emotions associated with them. Though maybe the viewer got very emotional when he saw how well he did. And it's that kind of emotional connection that I, I, I guess I'm talking about here and trying to get a sense of whether it could in fact be very important. Um, in, Let me just say one other thing and then I'll stop, because what you are suggesting is that maybe we should choose targets which are in fact emotions to be felt. In other words, in ARV we have multiple choices, and maybe one of the choices could be um, happy or sad. And then we would see, my mind is going so much with what you've talked about here, and I'm not sure you have answers, but see, please give me a response to these kind of entanglements with feelings at feedback time, which is happening in the future, versus a transcript you might generate in the present.
Yes. Well, time ago I had several contacts with people that have used this presentiment in the military field, trying to get information. And what they were telling me is that when they start having these, say, perceptions, the first part of the perception is emotional, that it brings you to that point, to that place, to that situation. And then you try to gather, say, information. But the link is an emotional link. If this emotional link is missing, then you don't have the entanglement, you don't have the link.
Okay, beautiful.
Related to this, the experiments, I'll speak slowly because of the echo. The experiments that Dean Radin has done in Marin County at the IONS Institute about presentiment, they're very short periods of time in which the presentiment is tested, right? They're only fractions of a second or maybe a few seconds. So I guess my question is, it appears that presentiment in the real world, like when military people are detecting tunnels or danger, that extends over far more than a few seconds. So my question is about the time span of presentiment and what you feel about that, what your experience, what your studies have shown about that time span, about how far we can get information or intuitions that are valid from the future.
Well, we did quite a lot of work with Robert Jan and Brenda Dunn, that I suppose many of you know from the ICRL in Princeton. And these experiments showed that the, say, non-local connection, because you can use this kind of emotional effect to have non-local connections in a present time, well, the non-local connection in say backward in time is much stronger than the one that you're able to do it at present time. And in the experiments that were carried out, the effects could be seen also 48 hours before, not just seconds before. So Dean Radin, he did experiments with skin conductance mainly, and the arousal of the reaction of skin conductance was 2 seconds before the emotional stimuli. But the presentiment link can have a much longer span, and it's not just 2 seconds. In our experiments, Antonella's design was 16 seconds, and we could see the effect 16 seconds before, but working on random event generators, you can see the effect even 48 hours before. And the effect is much stronger when emotions are used.
Again, thanks. And I see Jonah would like to speak about something here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, Ulisse, first of all, I don't really have a question. I just want to express my gratitude for presenting this to us here. It's very inspiring, very good work. Thank you for that. I work in the field of training people in consciousness work, not particular for the purpose of remote viewing or any other sort of professional application. I do have professionals too, but they apply this kind of work more like in counseling and coaching and so forth. So I have protocol experience with working with hundreds of people every month as to how to use their emotions and how to discern the information that's coming. My personal experience over the last 5 years working with thousands of people in this is that it's not the time span that determines the quality of the information coming through. It's the level of contamination that a person has as far as their personal level of consciousness goes. Not level of consciousness in the sense of psychology, but more in the sense of spirituality. So if a person has very little processing done on, say, you know, their inner child, their wounding effects, or even karmic aspects, then the emotions can be very distorted or misleading. And therefore, it's very difficult to compare the information that comes, because something that is, say, scary to me or triggering some kind of energetic responses or reactivity in me may be completely different for another person. So what has to happen first, if you want to sort of create a measurable platform is to lead people to process their unconscious energetic cloud, so to speak. So, because the problem that Ulisse, that you pointed out, the identity crisis, can overshadow the entire process of perception. So before a person can make sure that they are not reacting based on, say, a problem, in military often the case, a traumatic event, the information coming in needs to be filtered first through a development in their consciousness where they actually work on healing those aspects first. So using emotions can work with a person who is already aware of what their emotional triggers are. But if a person is unaware of these triggers, it's very difficult to use the information that comes because they have to work through the reactivity first. It's still connected to the vegetative nervous system and the automated system, the unconscious aspects that you pointed out. So to get to a pure kind of information coming in from your superconsciousness, those clouds, as I call them, have to be removed first, and that can only be done through practicing the connection of love within, meaning, in a non-esoteric way, practicing heart connection. That is my personal experience of working with thousands of people, that as long as they don't have a proper heart connection in place, which allows them to work through their unconscious triggers and energetic attachments, because it's a lot more complex than what we perceive through our minds. The information coming through is too distorted. So if one wanted to use this as for a say scientific or professional application, one needs to guide people through this consciousness work first, and then that becomes possible. I train people to do this professionally, and the ratio, I would say, is probably 1 out of 500. 1 out of 500 viewers or persons accessing information, retrocausal information, is actually receiving pure information. And that depends on the level of their consciousness, how much they have already processed those impurities, well, it's not good or bad, as you say, it's just overlay, energetic overlay to, like a filter that's too strong to evaluate the information.
I totally agree with all what you've said. I think that one of the key points is, what I call the attractor is really our spiritual level. So we need to go through a deep spiritual work inside, and everyone has to do it in his own way. But usually what really pushes us to do this work is suffering. People that suffer, they're forced to understand the meaning of life, feelings, emotions, love. And if you read the biography of Steve Jobs, you really see a person that deeply suffers, and this profound suffering forces him in this spiritual path that is at the basis of his ability to feel the future, to have intuitions. And so people really try always to avoid suffering. People get drugs, they get, they use many ways not to suffer. And when you try not to suffer, you're just slowing your spiritual process, which is at the basis of this ability to feel the future. So two elements would be spirituality and ethic. that have to be in a way focused on, but you know, you cannot force people to go in that direction. It's their life that pushes them in that direction. Any other question?
Hi, this is Patricia. I would like to make a question. You were talking about the experiments on retrocausality and that they show that feelings propagate backwards. And you said that you saw that this has impacts not just seconds prior to the event, but 40-something hours before the event. So my question is, would you have an example to pinpoint an example of these, of the experiments you have done, and what effects did you see that had on the past? Because I think this is a very important statement. It shows, or it means, that we can have an impact on the past, and that we can even make some changes in the past, if I am understanding this.
Yes, well, this is a very important question, because you know, with experiments you see that, say, on the heart rate and skin conductance, the effect, the retrocausal effect, is only seconds before, like 10, 20, 30 seconds before. But when you start doing experiments in a different way, like using random generators, you can see that the effect can show, say, 2 days before, or maybe even more. We tried with 2 days before. And this really opens you a new scenario, a new possibility, because, you know, when you get in, for example, when you use hypnosis, you see that you're able to move in the past of the person, and it's not just, say, the person imagining his past. It's often the real past of the person, and you can bring their different emotions, resources, and the person changes. So I'm quite sure that we can work on the past. It's not that things are determined and they're not, we cannot change them anymore. Using the proper tools, techniques that I say are mainly emotional and based on love, we can go in the past and change the past. It often makes me think about what, say, how miracles work. The key element in miracles is love, and when that is used, you can change the person, because you go in the past of the person, changing its past, and then the present is different. And if this is true, it really opens many, many possibilities.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure. Any other question?
Anybody else have a comment or a question? I have a couple if anybody else wants to jump in here. One sort of offline here is that it relates to dialectics. What you say relates a lot to dialectics, Marxist dialectics in particular. I wonder if you've had any explorations in that area.
Well, yes, I do have some, say, some input, some information in this field.
Okay. Well, I'll email you later about that, maybe, if I may, since there are very few Marxists in this field.
I didn't get your last words, but tell me the question. Yes.
I will. The other point, I just wanted to raise an example to see what you thought of this related to what you said. Lynn Buchanan, who's an ex-military remote viewer, has a video in which he says that he tried to use this influencing the past a bit. He says you can't change the past, but you can influence it. And the example he gave was that he was about to sign a contract to buy a house with his wife in a city, and his pen just flew up from the paper when he was about to sign it, and he said, "I'm not signing." And then they went and looked for other houses and found a house that they felt was much more suitable. And when it came to sign the paper, he somehow, I guess, I'm not sure exactly what he did, but he claims that without signing of the paper, he thereby influenced his decision in the past to have his hand fly up. So that's what he cites as an example of trying to use the present, I guess, to influence the past, or you could say using the future to influence the present. I just wonder if that's sort of in accord with what you have been explaining here.
Well, what the idea that we're working on is that when you have this kind of retrocausal effect, it can only be an advantageous effect. You cannot go in the past to kill someone or to harm someone. It's, you know, you can provide information that in a way helps the person to follow a better road. And this can be clearly seen with accidents. Like, there are studies about train accidents and also airplane accidents, that when there is an accident, people are able to feel it before, and a lower number of people gets on the trains that will have the accident, or they feel ill. Say, for example, after check-in, before boarding the plane, they feel ill and they don't board the plane. And so the idea that you can have is that the person was on the plane, it experiences, say, the accident, and its emotions flow backward in time, and they provide the information to the person in the past that then makes a different choice and doesn't board the train or the plane that will have the accident. But only few people are able to feel the future, and some really feel sick and feel ill, others have this kind of presentiments. But from a statistical point of view, for example, on commuters' trains, you can really see that there is a lower number of people boarding the train that will have the accident. So I think that everyone is constantly engaged in this backward in time flow of information. It's only that we don't, sometimes we don't use it. I think that it's more difficult to have really very strong, clear physical signs like a pen flying away, but maybe that could be, that could also be. Okay.
Thank you. I have another question, unless someone else has one more.
If I can, I would like to add something.
Sure.
From my personal experience, I call these things, these effects or phenomena, true self-promptings. Whether or not we can actually respond to those to this kind of information coming in, or retrocausal information coming in, highly depends on our congruence with our true self, with our whatever you want to call, you know, the centeredness. So the more congruent I become with, and you said it in different words, Ulisse. You said that the more I increase the syntropy in my life, you know, the more the entropic component, you know, decreases. So I have less mental overlay, I have less ego overlay, and I can actually move from reactivity to responding to things. So the reason why people feel sick but don't do anything is because they're not in congruence with that part of themselves. When they are, whether it's a matter of them haven't been working on this, or you know, just haven't been born with this kind of inner knowing, then it enables them to actually respond to it rather than to just react through, you know, those energetic triggers that we have. So the question of whether we can change the past or influence the past in regards to guiding us into our present is a matter of becoming congruent with the syntropy within ourselves, and spiritually expressed, you know, congruent with that divine aspect of ourselves. And that can only be done through overcoming, like you said. I really like that identity crisis part of your lecture, overcoming the identity crisis, which in my view is, you know, overcoming the fear of death, which is directly linked to the ego. So spiritually spoken, overcoming or transcending the ego is then what allows us to tap into this field within us, which then allows us to influence the past and our presence. The question of whether we can influence our future with this then becomes irrelevant, because when we are congruent with our sort of highest potential, as you called it, or, you know, highest good for ourselves, we don't have the ego need to control the outcome anymore, and we can just follow our inner signals, our inner guidance, you know, as it comes in, which is very, which you expressed as the compass. So it's a matter of the quality or the trust in our inner compass, in that inner navigator that comes through retrocausality, that then determines, you know, how we see or perceive the future and how we respond to the present. And the future becomes insignificant because it's based on our highest good. And if we can trust that, then those things like Lynn described, you know, little inner signals, and they very often come through through our body, through our physical, can then be identified as what they mean. See, other people may have had similar experiences where the pen flew away, but they didn't make the connection, and they didn't follow through on it because they don't know those inner signals. So they have to learn the inner signals first, like building, I call it building a lexicon of inner signals, you know, to know how this information is actually, you know, how they channel it, because that's different with every person. Every person has a different way of doing that. So yes, I agree with you, Ulisse, there, that you can influence the past and the present through tapping into this inner field. But for the biggest, and this is my practical experience, the biggest block or the biggest hindrance is the ego. Not the ego in the psychological sense, but the ego in the spiritual sense, which is linked to the death, the fear of death, and the fear of loss. And that, as you said, requires a spiritual view and a shift in focus towards, you know, becoming one with the universe and becoming one with you know, the overall field rather than my personal gain or my personal advantage.
Yes, I totally agree with you that one of the key problems is the fear of death. Because when we get in this perspective of syntropy and spirituality, we feel, we experience that our material life is just one day of a much bigger process. And death is a necessary part of our spiritual evolution. So if we really want to achieve, say, our mission, we don't have to fear death, because we, in a way, we're going to die maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but in a way we are already dead. If we are afraid of death, we're just not going to move in our spiritual path. And this fear of death, I think that has been intentionally used in history, for example, by the Catholic Church, to stop the spiritual growth of the population. And we just should remove this fear and know that even if we die, our path is going on. We're going on, so we're not. There is no way to die, because we have to get to the attractor, and that will require, say, many material experiences to move on this path. But it is really one of the key points is to change our perspective on death. Death is not the end. We should not fear death. We should feel that it's part of life. And you know, my father died last March, and in the last part of his life, he was very materialistic, but he started having the feeling of a previous life. In the last 3 years, he could feel the facts of a previous life. So we started talking about having lived a previous life, and then slowly was convinced that he was going to live another life afterwards. Even if he was a totally materialistic and non-believer person, he could feel that he was going to live again, and that really helped him so much to be happy in his last years of life. And he died as a happy man, because he said, you know, if you want to be happy when you get near to death, you must abandon everything. And he just didn't want to keep his grasp to any of the things that were so important before, and that has been a very good teaching for me, because I think that everyone should, in a way, change his perspective on death.
Marty, are you still here? Marty had an appointment, so he may have left. Anyone else have a comment? I have a couple more. I don't want to keep you too long, Ulisse, but have a couple more. Anybody else have something they want to say, or David, Nancy?
So we never really die. Our physical body just goes into the ground or gets cremated, but we really never die. That's what you're saying, and that's really cool that your dad had that experience before he passed away. That's an amazing thing. That seems to give us a lot of strength. It just gave me a lot of strength. You know, I got another 30-something years or so, and I'm okay now. Thanks. It's cool.
Nancy, I see your mics are up. Both Nancy's mics are up if they want to say something. You want to say something?
Nancy Smith here. There's some beautiful hope in it. It's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing it.
when Steve Jobs died, he's reported to have said, "Wow, wow, wow," just before he died, right? And I don't know if there's any more information on that, but maybe he experienced what you're saying. And I wondered if you could clarify, you know, the word love in English. We have agape and eros, right, in Greece, and thanatos. And agape and eros, agape generally translated as more platonic love, and eros sexual. And I wondered, when you use the word love, if it includes both of those, or if it's even broader than both of those, or what it means, because there's an issue there with the meaning of love in English. Let me unmute you here. Yeah.
Well, yes, I use it as saying maybe in a particular way, in a different way, because this feeling of warmth that we have, that we feel in our chest when we're moving towards that factor, which is our, say, mission, our spiritual level, we usually use the word love to describe this feeling, and this feeling is not necessarily related to eros. It's something that you can experience in the most diverse situations. For example, on a mountain, or doing your job, or with an intuition. And I think that constantly we can feel this feeling of well-being and of warmth that I name love. And this feeling should, in a way, guide our life and our choices. And that means that when we start following this feeling, we might choose, make choices that might be very different and very difficult for others to accept or understand. And we need to, in a way, to detach ourselves from the judgment of other people. If we want to follow our heart, if we want to experience love, we need to have the courage also to be different from what, say, other people would accept.
You're saying a lot of empowering things. I mean, you know, you're giving us the power to be an individual and live in our own space. It's very empowering. It's very nice. I have a question for you. Maybe I've been on and off a bit because I'm working at the same time, but how do I live my life in such a way where I don't come back in a physical body, that I don't know if you believe in this or not, but I transcend into something else. I transcend into some sort of higher life form that doesn't take a physical body. Is that possible for me and being a human being here in my life? Or for any of us?
Now, I'm not able to tell you how to do it, but in the idea that I'm following is that the attractor, what we could name the omega point, the say where we're converging, and not only us, but all of life and probably all of the universe is going in that direction. It's a process of increasing consciousness in the universe. So at the beginning of this process, the consciousness level is very material. It's attached to the material form. Then it slowly moves to higher levels. But I'm not able to tell you how many other material lives you will have to experience before this, say, more spiritual form will become true for your say, life or your experience.
So it's a higher consciousness. So so if we want to transcend, we have to raise our consciousness. Is that?
Yes, and I think that.
Sorry.
Yes, I think consciousness and linked to this feeling of love. Love is a key element of consciousness, and when we're able to say live in the spirit of love, then we're moving in that direction. But it's not that easy, because really that has a huge amount of implications, and you know, this idea about syntropy, it gives you a hint about what this process is, but it's not able to really answer all the questions.
Okay.
I think maybe we should wrap up, unless one more question or so. If not, it's another amazing presentation. I think it's really meaningful, and it's just wonderful that you've been able to put this together and present it to us. I'm just really grateful for it myself too. Anybody else? If not, let's close it down for now.
Thank you, Ulisse, and thank you, John, and everybody else. It was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, I will quit the connection, Marty.
Okay, Marty's gone, but thank you very much. Okay, bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.